It is 7:07, and today is April 7th, 2021. My name is Curtis Young. I'm the chair, Committee Board 12 Public Safety Committee. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Chanel, for moving over our attendees to our panelists. I thought it would create a more inclusive environment to have them as a part of the panelists on our side, as they would be if we were meeting in person. Hopefully, we'll be able to transition in the next few months to being back in person at some point, maybe a hybrid model as we move forward through the spring. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to my committee members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm the assistant chair.
Hi, I'm Mariela Graham.
Hi, I'm Osi Kaminar.
I'm Greg Serralo, public member.
Sorry.
Sorry, Rabbi.
Go ahead. Yosef Kalinsky. Curtis, you're muted.
All right, thank you very much. So today we have a pretty light agenda. We were hoping to have a discussion on marijuana legalization, but that passed. So we're happy to hear that that's moving forward. I did receive communication from Captain Bello about what that means, the impact of legalization, what that means in the community context. So we hope to hear a little bit more and to have them as part of our conversation as we discuss legalization and what that means, especially as we enter the coming months and the summer approaches. So we have our traditional updates from law enforcement agencies, and we'll start off with NYPD 33rd Precinct, Captain Bello.
Can I just add something, Curtis?
Yes, if there are other items to add to the agenda, please let me know at this time.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add to what you just said. I just wanted to let everybody know that we reached out to the Drug Policy Alliance to see if they could speak about the upcoming legislation, and then once it passed, just to see if they could join, but they didn't get back to us, unfortunately. So just wanted to let everybody know that.
Yeah, I'm sure they were celebrating the passage of it.
Yeah, super busy.
Didn't have anything to share other than it passed. But yeah, we can still talk about the impact of that passage and what that means. And there's been some changes to enforcement that we would love to hear from. So without further ado, Deputy Inspector Bello.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So like Curtis mentioned, there's definitely going to be a big impact when it comes to enforcement with the NYPD. 60% on average of firearms arrests stem from car stops. So normally you conduct a car stop, either you observe a violation or things of that nature, you approach the motorist driver, you smell marijuana. We are allowed, or we were allowed before, to either search the vehicle or search the occupants of the car. Obviously, that used to lead to other stuff, either narcotics or a firearm. And now with the passage, we're no longer allowed to do that. So whether right or wrong, you know, that's not for us to say. Obviously, once the laws are established, it's our responsibility to follow them, but it's definitely going to affect a gun arrest. I know a lot of people are going to be asking if DWI enforcement is going to increase. We only have 2 specialists citywide that are tasked with determining whether somebody that's under the influence of narcotics is in fact under the influence. I'm not sure if the NYPD is going to expand that type of personnel, if they're going to expand the training. As of now, we haven't really gotten any guidance when it comes to it. I know when I used to be a lieutenant in the Bronx and we used to do the DWI checkpoints, it was very difficult for us to get a prosecution when it came from DWI enforcement stemming from marijuana usage. So I don't know if that's going to continue being the case or if it's not, but that's where we're at now. Also, narcotics enforcement when it comes to weed selling is going to have to be defined and detailed. So obviously it's still illegal, but we're going to need to observe the hand-to-hand passing, not only of the narcotics, but also of the currency. Some of these drug dealers, what they do is they're savvy enough to have a middleman where the customer gives the funds to the middleman and then they get the product from the dealer. So I don't know if it's going to be an issue from the district attorney's office side, whether we need to observe the currency being passed from customer to dealer. And if that's the case, it's going to really be difficult for us to make an apprehension, because obviously there's somebody in the middle that we can confirm or verify whether the funds are being given to him to purchase the marijuana. So those are going to be some of the issues that we're going to have to deal with. I'm pretty sure it's going to be ironed out in the future. Anyone under the age of 21 cannot utilize marijuana in public view, obviously, but we don't really even have the mechanism to enforce it if we observe it nowadays. There's not a violation, there's not a code, there's not a summons as of yet that has been prepared or created to address if we see someone that's 20 years old or less than 21 smoking marijuana in public. In terms of shooting, we're up for the year in shootings. We were at 4 versus 1. There was one that we were able to send out to the Bronx. We were able to pull video from the confines of the 4-3 and determine that the incident happened in the Bronx. Most of us shooting recently have a nexus to a pattern, a robbery pattern, and we believe it might be retaliation to individuals getting robbed, whether it's in the Bronx or in the 3-4. And obviously, the investigation has led that possibly the people doing the robberies are residents of the 3-3. So we're getting a little bit of the backlash. So on March 25th, we took 2 individuals that were shot on 162 on Broadway. On February 21st, we took 1 individual that was shot on 162 in Fort Washington. So it's something that we're monitoring closely. I'm in close contact and communication with Deputy Inspector Peter Andrea. Every time that we take one of these incidents, whether a robbery or a shooting that we think might be related to this pattern, we make sure that our deployment is tight. We make sure that our investigation is tight as well, so we could try to ascertain who's in fact doing it and see if we could get a prosecution in that end.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the update, and Deputy Bello. Are there any questions for the 3-3 before we move on? I should also add, I forgot to mention this earlier, but in our last meeting, I said I wasn't going to be here. I was going to be in Michigan because my brother is being released from incarceration of 10 years. He's being released on Wednesday. I mixed up my dates, so I leave to go to Michigan on Monday. And I'll be away for the remainder of the month of April. So I would love if someone can volunteer to do the minutes, because I most certainly will be out of commission after I take the flight on Monday. And I mixed up the meetings I'll be missing. I'm going to actually miss the executive committee meeting and maybe the general body meeting later on this month. So if there is a volunteer, Mariella did it last month. Graham, do I see your hand? OC, do I see your hand? Danielle? I see Graham's hand. Perfect. Well, I'll send you the recording and you can just listen to it and type up everything. It's a pretty straightforward meeting this evening. All right. So thank you very much, 3-3. Danielle, you have a question? I see Danielle, but we'll start with our committee members and then we'll go to our community members. So the first question is from Danielle.
Thank you, Captain Bello, so much for that summary. Quick question about marijuana. It's my understanding that someone can still be arrested for having over a certain quantity on them. That's correct, right?
That is correct. The only problem is, I don't know what legal basis we're going to have to actually even search an individual that's in possession of a quantity that's above the legal limit.
Right. Okay.
And that's 3 ounces, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right, that's correct. 3 ounces personal, and then I think they could have up to 5 pounds in their residence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing for the vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
What do you mean?
Like I read something about, I know that you mentioned that you can't search somebody's vehicle just for smelling marijuana, but it's my understanding that there can still be justification for searching a vehicle, and that I guess if the vehicle is searched and a certain quantity is found, then that is also illegal, is my question.
That's correct, but we will need a reason to actually search the vehicle to begin with, and just the smell of marijuana is not going to be enough. The only thing that I could think of from a law enforcement perspective, I don't know whether this is going to be done or not, is what I mentioned previously. If I stop a motorist and I believe that he's under the influence of marijuana, we could arrest him and charge him for DWI. We could bring back the car to the station house, and then we could do an inventory search. If we find any other controlled substance, obviously contraband, we could add those additional charges. But let's say he's not under the influence and the passenger or somebody in the rear is the one that smoked, there's nothing we could really do about it. As a matter of fact, if he is under the influence and we arrest him, and let's say the passenger is in possession of a firearm, we can't even search them. We gotta let them, exit the vehicle and go on their way home. Because obviously right now, because marijuana is legal, we can't toss the car and we can't toss the passengers. The only thing that we might be able to do is charge the driver if we think he's under the influence with DWI.
I'm not sure if this is digressing, but just a quick follow-up. So are there any reason, what reasons then are there to search someone's vehicle?
Under the marijuana guidelines or?
In general, since that's no longer a reason, what would be a reason for someone's vehicle to be searched? I'm not sure if that's digressing.
Yeah, so the number one reason was the marijuana, when you could smell it. Most of the other controlled substance you can't really smell. So if we stop a car, we smell marijuana, the assumption is that there's contraband or narcotics inside the car. So the case law allow us to search not only the vehicle, but the passenger and the motorist. And 60% of the time it used to lead to a firearm apprehension. Since now marijuana is legal, let's say the driver hasn't smoked and the passengers have, it doesn't give us the right to search anybody or search the car. So they're free to go, even if one of them is in possession of a firearm.
So I do think that we're digressing a little bit, and I do want to add that as a part of our discussion on the issue, I think we have to figure out, we have to follow the regulatory agency. I mean, there's going to be this new regulatory agency that kind of is there to help with that, with this, all the new codes and what the requirements are for growing and selling and all these other things. So I think there's some work and some follow-up, reading perhaps for us to figure out and just kind of track what's going on in regards to that. There seems to be a lot of things that are not clarified just yet under the legalization. We know it's legal, but there are so many other items. So let's hold that into our overall discussion on the topic, and to figure out what we can do as a committee, next steps to either get more information, to invite someone from the district attorney, or to figure out what is going to go into the regulatory kind of framework of this new law. So with that being said, let's move on to, are there any other committee questions? Committee members with questions? Okay, I'll see.
Okay, hi, Inspector Bello. I think you helped me that you tried to find out information about the animal abuse that was reported to us last, now I want to say June or September. I know we spoke about it. Do you have any information about that?
Yeah, it was in August. I actually spoke to the executive officer of the 3-4, Thomas Palmer, and I spoke to the special operations lieutenant. What they did tell me was they made a notification to Vice. I was trying to ascertain from Vice if they have an update, but the case is currently closed and I don't have access to their case. So that's as far as I was able to go. I know the incident happened, I believe it was either 133 or 233 Nagel last August or September. But I spoke to the executive officer, and that's all they had. They responded to the job. They made the conferral with Vice, which I'm not sure why a conferral would have been made, because Vice normally deals with either prostitutions and gambling and things of that nature. I'm not sure why an animal cruelty job would be under their jurisdiction, but that's what they provided. I couldn't get any information from Vice. Their case was already closed, and that's as far as I made it to.
Okay, because the only thing that I would think of is maybe a dog fighting, which is illegal.
That could be. That could be. But like I said, when I reached out to Vice, they had no information because the case was closed. It's possible that they investigated and didn't deem that there was any dog fighting ring, and that's the reason why they closed it out.
One last question. Do you think that the ASPCA will have any information about that?
The only way they would have is if the dog was removed, and they didn't provide me any information whether the animal was removed or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Cheryl Miller, and followed by Bernard.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Okay. Inspector Bello, hello. This is Cheryl Miller. Okay. So I was just on Citizen app a little while ago before the meeting, And I saw that about 6:37 this evening, there was a robbery right on my corner, West 165 and Broadway. And supposedly there was no weapon involved. It was somebody that got hit and robbed. So I want to know if you know anything about that. Also, are there patrol cars going around? And because I really, actually for the first time in a while, I think it was last week, I saw a patrol car sitting right on 162nd and Broadway where that shooting happened a week and a half ago, I think it was. You just touched on it earlier. And they were just sitting where the shooting had occurred. They were just, I guess, monitoring over there. But I really don't see that many cars driving around unless they're driving around when I don't see them. But, you know, this to me is very unnerving. I mean, first it was a shooting 3 blocks from my house a week and a half ago, and now tonight was somebody got robbed. And I want to know what's happening with that. Also, I had asked you at the community council meeting, the 33rd council meeting that I was on a couple of weeks ago. I had mentioned about the dirt bikes. As you know, the weather's getting warm now and they're in full swing again. I wanted to know, are you working in conjunction with any precinct in the Bronx where you know that these bikers, these illegal bikes are coming in from?
Right, so the robbery you mentioned is actually a petty larceny from the Rite Aid on 170. So that's the reason why it came over. So what happens with the Rite Aids are when somebody goes in there, they try to commit a petty larceny. If a security guard intervenes, obviously it forces use, it turns from a petty larceny to a robbery. So that's what happened. On 162 in Broadway, we do have a car there. It is a steady post. It's part of my shooting post because we're anticipating possible retaliation in regards to the back and forth that's happening between the 3-3 and the 3-4. We also requested a poll camera, which is basically just a camera that we can monitor through live feed, just to see if we're able to identify some of these either shooters or the robbers. So that's, you know, we put in the request. Hopefully we'll be able to get it within the next couple of weeks so that we can resurrect it at that particular location. And then the dirt bike, we had an incident this past Saturday on 175 in St. Nick. It went semi-viral. It was actually, I don't know if you guys heard of the incident, the 18-year-old that got stabbed in the confines of the 3-4, 1-1 in St. Nick. His funeral service was held in the confines of the 3-3 on 175. They actually disseminated information that they were going to have a ride out. I got that information the day before, so I sort of set up a detail. I wasn't too sure if the ride out was in favor of the victim or the opposing party. So we set up a detail request. There was about 20 to 25 dirt bikes that showed up. We were able to make an apprehension on one of them. He's a Bronx resident, which is what we have discussed in prior meetings, that the 3-3 is not a precinct or community where they stash the bikes or where these motorists actually reside. Most of the time when we do have those type of incidents and we make an apprehension, they stem from a different borough, and primarily it has been the Bronx lately. So he was a Bronx guy who was actually on probation because he was arrested in possession of a firearm. He had a suspended license. The motorcycle was not stolen, but it was not registered. So that was an arrest that we made. We also have an operation set up tomorrow with DEP, specifically addressing the modified mufflers. That's going to take place tomorrow on 165 in Broadway. We're aiming between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.
Okay. That's right on my corner. Right on my corner.
I chose that location specifically for you, Cheryl.
Okay, so Cheryl, we have to move.
Thank you
very much, Cheryl, for your question, and thank you for the answer. So we're going to move on to Bernard. We do want to keep the comments brief. I never really focus too much on timing, but I want to make sure we're being clear and concise with our questions today because it's such a beautiful spring day. We don't want to be here all evening. So Bernard, you're up next.
Okay. Hi, Deputy Inspector Bello. I had a question about the dirt bikes as well, but you might have answered it. I heard that a friend of mine was down, I'm not sure what precinct this is, but 23rd Street Flatiron District. And on 23rd Street, there were a bunch of bikes doing wheelies and stunts. and they were surrounded by cars, and they were actually arrested, all 5 of them. Now I know 5 is not, we don't get 5 of them at a time up here. We get like 50 of them at a time, you know, or so. So, but I was just wondering about that sort of an interdiction of those guys. And I want to voice a concern about this marijuana thing. It's got to be obvious that marijuana is not a benign thing. We've now put it into the population. If you're catching 60% of marijuana stops have guns, then we've just put that many more guns in people's hands that are not going to be stopped. And the way things are going in the city, you know, it's really not looking good. I mean, one of my questions is, should I be packing my bags?
Well, we can't answer that question, and the marijuana is legal. So there's nothing we can do about it right now. We're not the legislature. We're not the senator. We're not the assembly people. So we have to move on from you know, being anti-legalization, because right now, right now it's legal. It's legalized. So we have to do whatever we can as a committee to talk and discuss regulation and how we can make sure that the implementation is one in which we are providing, you know, a good quality of life for our residents, those who don't smoke, those who are users, and also maintain some sort of public safety, ensuring that people are not, if we can't stop them and find other things, we're also acknowledging that, you know, the connection between guns and other things as well. But I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with this issue, because it's legal. So we have to now work as a committee to figure out the implementation process and what the regulation is actually going to be, because I think there are too many gray areas still for us to even have a comprehensive discussion about it. So, so Captain Bello, Deputy Bello, you want to go ahead and answer the first part of the question, and we can save the second marijuana discussion for later.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, normally when they come through the 3-3, obviously, is a group of like 50 and 60. Most of these bikes don't have any license plates on them because they go out with the intentions of violating all sorts of traffic laws. The good thing about it is that we've been monitoring the social media. So normally if we do get some type of intelligence, we know exactly where they're going to meet up. If we know there's a particular bridge that they're going to take, we try to post our cops there just to deter them from coming into the 3-3. But there's about, I want to say, 13 bridges that connect the Bronx to Manhattan. So across the whole entire Manhattan North. So it becomes really difficult to set up a post in all these particular bridges, especially when we don't know exactly from what location they're going. So listen, it's a very difficult issue. What we've been focusing on from the 3-3 is trying to ascertain exactly where they're stashing it. So we've been doing joint operations with FDNY at certain storage facilities and storage locations. We've been successful in the past. Unfortunately, that location was in the Bronx because the majority of our intel is leading us to Bronx locations and Bronx residents. So that's kind of like where we're at now when it comes to it. When we see them, our policy and our process is to try to record them with our body-worn camera. If we do get a good video or good picture or visual of a particular individual, we submit it through facial recognition, which was a topic that came up in one of our meetings. And sometimes, and most of the time, it becomes actually fruitful if we do get information or an image on an individual that has been arrested in the past. In NYPD case, the fact that we get a positive facial recognition hit doesn't establish probable cause. What I try to do afterwards is try to ascertain if there's anybody in the NYPD that has arrested him in the past. If he's on parole or he's on probation, we try to get his parole officer or his probation officer to identify him for us. If he does ID him, it raises our level to PC, and then we have enough to make an arrest on apprehension.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so we have one additional comment. Is this for the 3-3, Layla?
Hello, yes, how are you?
Good.
I have a question regarding Dickman, the 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, 201, 207. It's regarding first the noise, the cars meetups, the racing, and the dirt bikes. Is the precinct doing more work and policing around? Because I mean, it's summer, almost summer in here, already summer, and we already have all these issues.
Thank you very much, Layla. That's a perfect transition because we do have Deputy Inspector Andrea from the 34th on our call this evening. So I'm going to pass it on to Deputy Inspector Andrea to give us an update and talk about this issue as relates to you just made. Thank you very much, Deputy Inspector.
Might be muted.
I don't think you're muted.
He might be having technical difficulty. So I'll jump in regards to what we've been doing. I actually did an analysis and overview in regards to 311 complaints in the 3-3. Today, specifically for a particular location, and I noticed that there were 53 311 complaints. What I started doing was I started emailing and contacting those that we could 311 callers that we could actually verify either through email or telephone. I reached out to them. I told them if there's any way that they could have a sit down with me so that they could identify their top 5 locations. That way, as opposed to calling 311, they could just reach out to me directly and I could get them connected to our NCOs and see if we could do any sorts of operations. What I realized is the majority of the problem, especially with 311, is that we need to connect. We need a bridge somehow to connect the complainant with the owner. We've been very successful. There was a complaint that was that arose in one of the district cabinet meetings. I was able to contact the caller. I spoke to the owner and he was able to fix the problem within a day. So if you guys know anybody that has been complaining, especially in the 3-3, you let me know who that person is. Just put them in contact with me, and we'll make sure that we'll do some sort of operation or connect both parties to see if we could fix the issue. So that's what we've been doing in the 3-3 in regards to noise complaint, our locations. In regards to vehicles, a temporary place, we've been hitting them extremely hard. We don't even have enough parking with the amount of vehicles that we've been confiscating in regards to forged temporary plates.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Inspector Andrea, are you there now? Do we have anyone on the line from the 3-4? '34th precinct in the house tonight?
It looks like he's there, but
Yeah, I see. I was excited because we haven't had him here in a long time.
he keeps
Okay.
unmuting, or I guess he's still muted.
Chanel, are you able to request the person to turn their mic on? I think that's a function that the host could do. Or maybe chat.
Who?
Peter Andrea.
Okay, just
I can also message them. I think I can send a private message or a message to them as well. Is that possible? So hold on, everyone. We're going to be right back with you.
It looks like he's unmuted right now.
Unmuted. Okay, that's a good sign. Maybe he's Deputy Inspector Andrea. Are you with us?
He's saying he can't hear you, Curtis. He just put something in the chat.
That he can't hear us. All right. So there may be some technical issues on your side because I see you and I see that you're off mute. And
Can you maybe send like a message via chat or something, or Q&A, or let's see.
yeah, are you able to send us anything?
He put something in the chat, Curtis.
He put
He
something in
did
the
put something in the chat.
Yeah,
Yeah, he direct messaged you, I think.
direct messages me? I don't.
Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Okay.
He said, I can't hear you guys.
Okay. Alrighty. But that's unfortunate. I'm not sure what that is about. Maybe is there a way for you to, for Chanel, could you email Deputy Inspector the Zoom information again, and they can and request that they dial in using the phone as an option?
okay.
We have
Is
that
that
number.
possible? Okay. While we're waiting, we're going to move on. We're going to keep the
Hi,
party.
guys. Lieutenant
Okay.
Vaccaro, I'm back. Sorry,
Okay.
I got it working. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
here
no
representing
problem.
3-4.
Okay, thank you. What's your, this is not Deputy Inspector.
No, unfortunately, he's unavailable this evening, and so is the Special Operations Lieutenant, who would usually also be here. I am the newly assigned 3rd Platoon Commander, so I've been here for about 2 weeks. I come from all over, internal affairs and Manhattan North Narcotics, so I'm here. Got my sheets in front of me. I am happy to help and answer any questions I can in the best capacity I can.
What happened to the last person who said they were going to be here every month and they were going to not go anywhere?
I have no idea what my future holds, but I'm here
Okay.
tonight.
All right. Well, we hope to have consistency from the 34th precinct. It's always a new person coming. But thank you so much. I'm not sure if you heard the question or not. Deputy Inspector Bello from the 33rd did chime in. So the question from Leela, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, was what is going on? Could you give us first of all, a general update on what's been going on in the 34th precinct, any patterns you've noticed, and then if you could also just address anything that's happening around the noise issue, this person who mentioned, did you hear their question?
I did not hear the question.
Okay, Layla, how about
I can repeat that later if you want, yes.
Yeah, how about you repeat your question now, or after the presentation? So you want to give us an update first, and tell me your last name again, just for the record.
Lieutenant Vaccaro. It's V like Victor, Accaro.
Okay, Aro. Okay, Vaccaro. All right, perfect. So go take it away.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. So for the last 28-day period, we're up a substantial amount due obviously to a lot of changing factors. We have currently 127 officers assigned, 14 sergeants, 6 lieutenants. That is significantly down from last year and even further down from the years prior to that. So we are working on very minimum manning here. We are doing the best we can. We are putting out anywhere from 3 to 4 cars a tour, which is significantly less than we'd like to, but between covering hospitalized prisoners and details, especially now that people are being sent downtown for potential riots and protests, we are working with the skeleton crew, but we obviously trying to do the best we can. We are focusing a new task force now specifically on the areas behind GW High School, which is around Audubon, the 207 area, and then over down by La Marina at the end of Dickman there. We have 6 officers assigned to weekend tours, so they will work Wednesday through Sunday, and Wednesday through Monday, and where they work from 5:30 p.m. till about 2:30 in the morning. And their specific job is to actually deal with our noise problem, because we are getting large groups of cars and dirt bikes and people out having a good time, which is all good, well, and fun, except it's at the expense of all our residents, which is a huge problem. And it also takes away a lot of our resources, because these cars and these dirt bikes set off what's called our shot spotters, which let us know when a noise reaching the level of a firearm goes off. We send officers there immediately, and it helps us to try to solve any firearm crimes. But the issue is going to be that these cars are so loud when they send off these same alarms, we're rushing over there and it's a bunch of cars. We end up chasing our tails, and you lose half an hour and you can't deal with other less serious crimes going on. So we're all over the place, but we're doing the best we can. Unfortunately, we are getting a little behind here. We are up in robberies, we are up in felony assaults, and we are up in grand larceny autos specifically. Our grand larceny auto problem is mostly around the 207th Street area, and it happens to be a lot of people are going in and buying food and stopping in to stores, and they're leaving their cars running in the middle of the street. This is, if you can advise all your friends and community members, don't do this.
Yes.
Park your car as legally as you can. I know parking is an absolute nightmare. We have traffic people working around the clock trying to issue summonses and get people to move along to keep the flow of traffic going. But if you leave your car running in the middle of the street, it's thieves' perfect opportunity. Mm-hmm. They jump in your car and they take off and they're gone. Most times they're over the bridge into the Bronx. The car has a new VIN plate on it and different license plates. Within 20 minutes, now it looks like a whole different car to the untrained eye, unless you look at the side of the motor or underneath the dashboard. And this is a huge problem for us, because it takes a thorough investigation and it takes people that are thoroughly trained to look for these things.
Yeah. Well, that's something we've heard for a long time, an issue. And my question to you all is there could community fairs do a public service sort of campaign and post flyers in delis and bodegas? And when people go when they walk in, they'll see the flyer from you all saying, don't do this. I think we requested once before to have a flyer sent or something sent to us we can share with our community. Is that happening? Could that happen? Is that something community affairs could do?
Community
flyer?
affairs 100% can do this, and with working with our intelligence unit and our usual special operations lieutenant, we know we are working to get it out on Twitter and get it out on social media, as well as we'd love to get you guys a flyer and get it out there to all the restaurants and the bodegas and all the community members, because while it seems, hey, I want to run it real quick, cars running, air conditioning, heat, cold in the winter, it makes perfect sense and we all do it, but it's also a perfect opportunity for other people. So
Exactly.
it's a kind of a catch-all.
I think public information, public education campaign work like this is just the easy solve. I mean, obviously, if people are not leaving their cars running and the whole key fob issue is no longer an issue, then the GLAs are going to go down. That helps us all. We have to hear about that every month. So I think if you all could send us something, I'm going to hold you to this. I'm going to contact you and I'm going to remind you to send us a flyer, you and Captain Bello, to see if we can connect us to, I mean, even if it's not you all, the community affairs person, to get a flyer that we can at least email. And then I would encourage you all, I know you all go out and pass out flyers for domestic violence, and I've seen your Twitter, and I know that you all do that in the precincts. This would be a great opportunity to do the same thing, to do a tabling at George Washington area. I think you all go there often to pass out information. If you all could just pick a few weekends and go out and do this public sort of information sharing, I think it would help people know the risks that they face themselves with leaving their cars running while they go inside. I mean, we also have a parking issue uptown, which is a whole nother committee, but that's also an issue. People can't find parking when they're going shopping. All right, so there is a question from Lynn. So Leah, do you want to jump in now with your question, and we'll go to Lynn afterwards?
Yes, so my question was, I think he responded a little bit regarding noise issues on Dickman, 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, from 201th Street to 207th Street. Most than anything is on 9th Avenue where we have most of the noise. Also, I wanted to ask if it's possible to close any of those streets where traffic shouldn't be, like traffic is not allowed. So they usually meet up over there. And we submit 311 tickets. We don't want to bombard the 311 sending too many tickets. So, or we were thinking about last year, they closed some of those streets during the summer because obviously 207th Street was a mess. And can that be repeated this year? Maybe that will help deter some of these issues regarding the noise.
I'm sorry, I lost you on the end there. My Wi-Fi cut out again in the precinct here. I heard most of it, so I think I can actually respond pretty intelligently here for you guys. So we have, like I said, we have our task force out there now, and they just started last week. So they're going to work with dealing with a lot of times. I also know about the 311 for the noise complaints and the parking issues. Working with DOT, we'd like to shut down certain streets, but unfortunately, it's not just us that can do it. We need the city's approval to it, and we need traffic planning to approve us doing it, so we don't just push the traffic to another place and just cause a further backup. Along with this new task force that we have, they will be working around the GW area, around La Marina, and around the 207th Street area. They will be what we call roving, so they will be all over the place to deal with the noise and the complaints. We also now have the strategic response group out here, so they're also going to help with a lot of our 311 calls. Like I said, we are so far undermanned right now that we get between regular 911 calls and 311 jobs, we are in backlog almost consistently throughout our entire tours every day. Mm-hmm. We are addressing everything as best we can, and it just, I mean, the academy is going to graduate shortly, so we are expecting a few more officers. So hopefully that will definitely help. I know we're going to get another sergeant in about a week, so we can try to spread out the resource a little bit more and do as much as we can with the resource we have until we're continuing to get more.
Okay.
Question. Last year they closed some of the streets on 9th Avenue because they were dead ends. Will that be a little more easier to do too?
I can't speak to last summer. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. I've only been here for 2.5 weeks. I know we have a supervisor meeting tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. to go over what the plan is to continue to try to deal with the problems that we have now and that were coming this summer. So I'm sure this will be addressed. I will definitely relay this to Deputy Inspector Andrea about closing the streets. That if it seemed like a good option last year, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do it again this year.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Take it to the meeting tomorrow and share
yes.
And then hopefully, I would like to make the personal request to have a more detailed conversation about what the plans are for the summer at our May meeting, because 4th of July is around the corner. We have the enforcement issue. We know last year, I think the enforcement whole thing just kind of was shuffled, and there was a new arrangement with different enforcement, with different agencies on firework mitigations and who contacted who's responsible. I still don't know who's responsible for what when it comes to these sorts of complaints. So it would be great to have a little bit of a clarity or understanding of what the summer plans are. And I hope that you all would have discussions about the fireworks and everything comprehensively sooner than later, and able to share with that. Is that possible for you all, for both precincts to come during the month of May to share some of the plans or some of the things publicly that you can share with us, of course, about what the summer is looking like for you all?
I don't see why that would, I can't foresee that being a problem at all. I think it's actually a great idea, because then you guys at least as a community have an idea of exactly what our plan is, what we're doing, and everyone's got to work together, right? So between you guys helping us and us working with the community, it's the only way we're going to solve any of our problems and give everyone a better quality of life, because that's the goal here.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think we're going to have a lot of complaints over and over again, the same issues, the noise, the biking, the fireworks. And it's like, we can't answer those questions ourselves. We need to know what the plans are, who to contact if they have some fireworks on the street and there's a recurrent issue. I think having clarity on who's responsible for what, when to call 311, what the routes of communication should be, and what happens if we have a lot of concerns. Who do we contact with people within your agencies that can help move these forward? So I would love to, I'll follow up with an email before the meeting to remind you all to come prepared to discuss some of the preliminary plans or actions for summer.
Of course, and I'm happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Does that sound good for you, Deputy Inspector Bello?
Yeah, definitely. We're already in the works because, Tanya Bonner, she set up the whole, so
Yes.
we've been in communication with the DA's office, DEP, and things of that nature. So definitely.
Good, perfect. All right, so then there was Lynn. Could you pose just a few of your questions? We have to move on. So I'm going to turn it over to you to pose your question publicly.
Okay. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Excellent. So real fast, these are my 3 questions. Can you provide any details about the shooting and the robbery that happened at Fine Fare Supermarket that's located at Dickman and Broadway? This happened, I'm thinking 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that's 1. 2, what are the plans to deal with fireworks? And Curtis very effectively already dealt with that. I love the idea of having that kind of a call. If that could be publicized widely, so the information could be disseminated and more people that are on this call could hear it, I will work hard to disseminate the information in my co-op building. And then 4thly, and we touched on this briefly, but I think it's a different aspect. What's being done to address the reckless and dangerous driving of the motorcycles, dirt bars, and cars? We talked about the noise, but it's on the sidewalk, it's going against traffic, it's doing wheelies, you get it. In terms of location in the 3-4, what you do is you have people going up and down Broadway and then up and down Seaman. And I suspect they go somewhere, they turn around and they come back. It's almost like a continuous loop. So again, if we just start with the shooting robbery at Fine Fare Supermarket on Dickman and Broadway, could you share anything with info about that with us?
Sure. 1 second. I'm actually just bringing it up right now so I can give you a better description here. That was the one that happened on the overnight. Is that the one? Am I correct?
Right, that happened on, I think, a Friday night.
Yeah, that's 3-3. That's actually related to our shooting from March 25th. So it's basically a robbery. It's currently part of a pattern. It's citywide pattern number 21. This is actually an extension of a pattern that started out in 2019, citywide pattern number 38. So it seems to be individuals from the 3-3 that are doing robberies in the 3-4 and even the Bronx. So normally what they do is they observe an individual that's wearing maybe expensive jewelry. They track them for a little bit. They jump out of their cars. They do the robberies. And if the victim resists, they end up shooting them. So that's kind of like what happened in this incident in the 3-4. I guess some information was received by the CV that he possibly knows who the robbers were. And then we got some retaliation in the confines of the 3-3, which led to a March 25th double shooting.
Okay, and I'm sorry,
So,
how did the supermarket figure into that?
They didn't. The incident happened in front of the supermarket.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful to know. And then so the next contestant was fireworks. We talked about that. And then finally, the reckless driving that's associated with these vehicles that also can be making noise.
Yeah,
We
so-
are.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is the 3-3 and 3-4, we're planning on having operations with DEP. Our operation is set up for tomorrow on 165 and Broadway. What we do is when we get those type of vehicles and we make an attempt to stop them, if they don't, then obviously if the vehicle is registered, we'll generate a complaint report and then we'll open what is called a warrant out for their arrest. And we've sort of been successful with that, especially if we catch them on body-worn camera. So that's what we do on our end when it comes to either a vehicle that is driving recklessly and decides to flee. Our policy is, and basically a citywide policy is, to not chase, to avoid an innocent bystander of getting hurt. So if we could record them on body-worn camera, we'll generate and prepare wanted flyers. Most of the time, we're able to identify who this driver is, the motor it is, and if that occurs, then obviously we'll put out a warrant for their arrest, and at some point the warrant squad will apprehend them.
Okay. So thank you very much to everybody in the 3-3 and the 3-4. I know none of these issues are easily resolved. Really appreciate your hard work on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you both. Oh, Danielle and Mariella have a question.
I don't think you got to the committee yet.
All right. So we are, yeah, there you go. We're on you.
Yeah, so I have a couple things. So I guess just like going back to street closures, I just hope that whatever streets are potentially going to be considered for closures would be brought back to us so that we can talk about it. Because I just don't want a situation where we are arbitrarily closing streets just for the sake of closing streets. I saw a bunch of streets proposed in the chat, and I guess I just, it reminds me of the conversation that we had around, that we had a few meetings back about speeding. And I think it's just important to be thoughtful about, closures and things like that. So, and then my second question, or I guess that was more of a comment. And then I have a question about the police vehicles that have been parked on Vermilia between 204 and Academy. So I personally observe them every day, and sometimes there are multiple vehicles. And last month we were told that there was a shooting, and that maybe possibly drug related, maybe gang related, but it's unclear what exactly is happening, and if there are any details on the shooting. And I guess I'm just wanting to understand why the vehicle's been there for so long, and if you know until when it will be there.
Concerning the car that's always on 66 Vermilia, it is in regards to a shooting just over a month ago, and the 3-4 squad is still working on it to determine all the facts of it. But because it is also a high narcotics area for us and such a lot of problems in the past, we're keeping the car there to keep the violence down, and just to for a consistent show that we are out here, that it is not okay just to clearly shoot people in the middle of the street, because it was a related homicide. So we are keeping the car there for a little bit longer. I don't know the exact time that we will pull that car. I will probably know more tomorrow after the supervisors meeting, because we're going to discuss again the summer plan, and that is a large resource because we lose 2 officers and a car for an entire tour every day. So we will know more tomorrow. Regarding the street closures, I fully agree with you that it should be discussed with the community of what streets would be most effective, and be the best deterrent for stopping the problems that we're having, while not creating problems on the other side of the precinct for traffic and backflow. And obviously, as members of the community, you guys would know which streets would be the best, which would be the worst. And I will bring this up again tomorrow at the supervisor meeting and discuss with the other executives what the best plan should be, and that we can speak with you guys before making any big decisions that are going to change traffic patterns for the summer.
Yeah, thank you. And this is also actually an issue that would connect to transportation, because our recommendations are I think you have to connect with the community board, traffic and transportation committee, because that closing the street would fall under DOT. And so we have to liaise with another committee. So we don't have.
I was just going to finish. Yeah, I think it would be great if you could bring those suggestions back to us. And just about the 207 example, 207 and 10th, there's a ton of traffic there every day. I drive over the bridge every day to Queens, or most days. And yeah, I think that's just an example of how closing that area could potentially have a lot of implications for backup. So yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, Curtis. I just want to make that.
I just want to make, that's transportation committee. not street closures in our here. But all right, so then there was Mariella, and I see another hand, but let's go to Mariella first.
Sure. So I appreciate what the 33rd precinct said about an operation tomorrow with DEP. I was wondering, A, if there is such an operation set up in the 3-4, and then just a more general question about these operations, like how often do they happen? Is there any opportunity for community members to suggest an intersection? And then just, if we say that they're successful, but I know that the city policy is to not give chase. I'm just wondering, like, what does successful mean? Is it like 2 cars, 1 car? Yeah, those are my 2 questions.
We are in the process of, like I said, getting ready for our summer planning. So we have no operation planned as of yet. We do have our traffic guys out there as much as possible. There is no chase given to any dirt bikes or motor vehicles that run from us, and there's proper paperwork, unless there's extenuating circumstances, of course, that would lead to obviously the loss of life or the fear of safety for loss of life. But we, of course, any input you guys have or suggested corners or intersections where you see problems with dirt bikes, cars, and think these operations could be fruitful, we'd love to hear them, and we'd love to, as we're planning, it makes our lives easier to actually know where you guys think the worst problems are, because then we can address them accordingly.
Yeah, in terms of how often it's going to happen, obviously it's a joint operation, so we need to hear from DEP on how often they could do it. If it's up to me, I could do it every week because my personnel is always available. We have 24/7 coverage, so that's not really an issue. But I know even setting this one up, they could have only done it from like Tuesday to Thursday, certain time frames, just because they might not have enough personnel the following days or the remaining days. So we'll see how this one works out tomorrow. This is the first one that we're doing. The process is supposed to be, they're supposed to read how high the noise is with the decibel meter. The NYPD is going to conduct the car stop, and then they're going to issue the summons. So that's kind of like the way that we have it laid out. So in terms of success, I mean, I guess it depends, right? If we issue 5, 10, 15 summons and the problem still persists, how successful is it possibly? But the location that we targeted because Tanya Bonner brought it up in one of her meetings, and I know Cheryl Miller has brought up and dirt bikes on the vicinity of 164 and 165 in Broadway. So if anybody has another location that they want us to tackle, let me know. We'll coordinate with DEP, and then we'll definitely make it happen.
Okay.
Sure. I'll just say that 215 in Broadway, because the sanitation depot is right there, where someone had said like that there seems to be this loop between Broadway and Seaman. I think that the turnaround loop often seems to be 218 and Broadway, between also 10th Avenue, Broadway and Seaman. So I would say if you have a higher view, you can see all the circles and all of the tire marks right at 215 and Broadway. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're going to take that back to your supervisory meeting tomorrow, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, cool. There's a lot of great information that you're getting here. For your second week on the job, you're going to know everything. All right, so we have one hand from the community. Kelly P, could you please pose your question? Okay.
Sorry, there we go. I was on mute. I apologize. Yes, this is for the 34th precinct. I just wanted to know if there is any information you can give me regarding the drug activity going on consistently around the clock on the corner of Hillside and Elwood.
So obviously we are equipped. We deal with as much as we can that comes over as 911, but our NCO program is more in charge of dealing with that in conjunction with narcotics. We have a 3-3-3-4 module that I know is working on all the complaints as much as they are also detailed out because of there's a task force that was going downtown to deal with all the crimes against the Asian community, as well as getting prepared for if there are potential riots and or protests this summer that would require them. But I know that they are working on it, and that's as much as I can give you right now because you would have to defer to them for their expertise.
Okay.
And just on that note, I just wanted to ask your question regarding to the low staffing shortage. Is this due to massive amounts of retirements, or is it strictly because 34th precinct officers and other officers are being moved downtown for for other issues. I'm just wondering how we could put pressure on our city officials that those officers are needed up here where people are, living and haven't moved out of town. So
it's a combination of both, to be honest.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And we can talk a little bit about
Thank
that. We can talk a little bit about that later on. But I also want to, so we're going to move on. Graham, you're the final comment.
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, it's a question, but not for the officers here, because I feel like the officers have been receiving a lot of questions, and
okay.
I want to know, because I can't tell if everybody's in the room, if any representatives from the council member's office are here, because as I understand, he is the chair of the transportation committee, and I'd like to know what's being done on the city level and on that level, on the council level. Is this being paid attention to? Are you hearing us? Are you hearing the people who are showing up to these meetings? If you're here, please speak up.
I don't see anyone from the council member's office, and it is a valid concern, which is what I was going to say earlier, that a lot of the staffing issues, if there seems to be a staffing issue at the 31st precinct, I think we can all walk away with that. So that is connected to the city budget, and there seems to be some issues with transportation, and that seems to be connected to the city council committee. So I do think that it would be great to have the city council member come to our committee to share any updates or to respond to some of these questions, because it's not completely fair for you all to have to answer some of these questions about.
And he did spend a lot of time. He does when there's an issue that's interesting to him, show up. What was it that he spent about an hour or something last month over the restaurants or something like that? So it'd be nice to have some responsiveness from our elected official, even if he is being termed out.
And we are entering the budgetary system. Not only the state budget has passed, we're now entering the city budget process. Well, finalizing the city budget by the June 30th. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about these issues that we can probably get answered by the city council member. So I will we can make sure that's reflected in the minutes that you're drafting, Graham, and we can make sure that we send that request to. I don't even know who representatives are in his office. Maybe if I don't know who they are. They don't come here regularly, so we can try to find out who they are and invite them to attend on his behalf, or invite him to attend as well. All right, with that being said, we are going to move on from the updates from our precinct leaders. Thank you very much. You've done a really good job at answering a lot of the questions we have. I just want to recenter us, because one of my goals when I first became chair was not to only have our meetings be centered around the questions and the back and forth between the precincts. And I think it's really important to have the conversation, but I want us to also know that there are other avenues that people can go to. The precinct council meetings are monthly. They're outside the committee board. They don't really involve us, but that's an additional opportunity for people to go to voice their concerns. I think it's like you find what works for you and you go, but there are other options. We're not the only kids on the street dealing with public safety issues. So you can also contact the precinct directly. They make themselves available, so in case there's something that happens between the meeting and next month. So don't feel that you have to always come here to voice your concerns. You can always reach out to them directly, and also attend the precinct council meetings to voice your concerns with them. So we're going to move on with Superintendent Miller, followed by FDNY for updates.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My pleasure being here with you again today. Quick updates in regards to Edgecombe Correctional Facility. Since our last meeting, we did another round of vaccinations for the staff and inmates. So they got their second shot of Moderna. We're going to be moving on because the state actually no longer has categories. All inmates are eligible for the vaccine, and we're going to be using the Johnson & Johnson. We anticipate doing it next week. We polled the inmates that we have right now, and approximately 50% want the shot. We're going to try to get them some more information so they could make a and, you know, an informed decision. We know there's hesitancy that exists out there, but a lot of times people don't have all of the facts. So we're going to at least give them facts so they can make an informed decision. And obviously doing the one shot Johnson & Johnson just makes it easier to get more people vaccinated and get closer to some form of herd immunity. So we've been doing that. We are in the midst of accreditation. Every 3 years, we get basically audited by the American Correctional Association. They check all of our policies, our documentation. They come and actually visit and do a walkthrough of the facility to make sure that we're meeting all standards. We had a pre-audit that went well, so we're in line to do well with the actual audit, which will take place at the end of the month. As it relates to the community, we're still doing our fence project. So that, you know, there's some encroachment on the sidewalk. So I know that's a concern. Hopefully it'll be done by the spring. We haven't had any problems as far as the neighboring buildings. We haven't had any issues with contraband or anything like that. We have had a change in our population due to COVID since last July. So the population that we currently have are individuals on their last 90 days before returning home, and we still have the work release female population. So both populations, you know, are running well in the facility, and we have no issues. So thank you for allowing me to report.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, Danielle?
Thanks so much for joining. I have a quick question about voter registration. Are you, since you said a bunch of people are going to be released within the next 3 months, so maybe some of them are going to be released before voting, are there efforts to register folks to vote so that they can vote in that election?
Well, I know they're automatically, we don't do voter registration, but I know that they are allowed to register. We give them, when they're released, we give them paperwork for them to be able to register. We just can't register while they're still in the facility. But we give them the information to be able to register. So I don't know how that impacts on the deadlines for upcoming elections. But anybody that we have would be eligible to vote in the fall, per se.
Yeah, or in the, yeah, I mean, they can register to vote. It's my understanding they can register to vote. They just can't vote if they are if they're sentenced. So if they don't register in time, then there's a chance that they might not be able to vote.
Well, he's saying the responsibility is on them. They can't register while they're currently in their facility. So once they're released, they can register themselves, and it's outside their responsibilities. What he's saying, is that correct?
Yeah, we give them. I know we give them the information. We do it's not a pardon, but there was the what allowed them to know that they could vote, that they were eligible to vote. So we did that information campaign, but we don't do the registration process.
Okay, so it's something that your facility just chooses to, or just, it's not a practice that you do.
Yeah, I don't think it's a choice. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's a choice that we're not doing. It's not something that we were authorized or that I do. So what I'll do, Danielle, and you can always follow up with me. Okay. I'll follow up with. I'll double check. But right now, it's nothing that we're doing. So if it's something that we should be doing that I'm not aware of, yeah, I'm willing to check.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm involved with voter registration on Rikers Island. I help actually create a whole document that was disseminated to all of correctional health staff. So I researched a lot, and it's my understanding that folks cannot vote who are sentenced, but they can still register. So if they're going to be, so my point was that registering in time to be able to vote for the election when they're out.
Now I understand what you're saying. If they could register it, and then when they get out, they'd be able to vote. I understand what you're saying. I'm just, it's not something that we're doing, but I'm going to double check.
Okay. Thank you.
Right,
and where exactly, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. And where exactly is the facility? I don't actually remember where you're located.
We're between 163rd and 164th on Edgecombe. So we're directly across from the renovated park that's there, and we're right next to the middle school.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. So our next report is, our next update report is from FDNY.
Hello, good evening. Pleasant spring to everyone. I certainly am enjoying this warm weather and hopes that it continues throughout this season. Just wanted to share some updates with you. As always, we are continuing to share this information that hop to it. This is your sign to make sure that you have a fully functional carbon monoxide smoke alarm. Should you know anyone who is within a vulnerable population that needs one, SDNY alongside Red Cross, our retired firefighters, we are working diligently to make sure that all New York City residents have those working alarms within their homes. And you can always reach out to me should you want to have a presentation. But if you just want to make a call, so we're not only relying on, email signups, you can always call 1-877 Red Cross. That's with one S. And I believe the number is translated to 1-877-773-2767. So 1-877-73-2767. Lots of sevens in there, but we hope that you would call and really partake in this initiative. We received grant funding, and we all know how grant funding works. We are to use it. We are to say, not only have we used it, we need more to make sure that the people, our neighbors that truly them, are getting this as well. Just want to share with you our report for some of the fires that have taken place within Community Ward 12 throughout the month of March. For Community Ward 12, for structural fires, there were 41 structural fires throughout the month of March. Year to date, there have been 127. For non-structural fires, there have been 23. Year to date, there have been 166, totaling the amount of fires for the month of March to be 64. Year to date, 293. For non-medical emergencies, there have been 321. Year to date, 1,032. For medical emergencies, there have been 597 throughout the month of March. Year to date, 1,788, totaling the amount of emergencies, both non-medical and medical, to be 918, and year to date, 2,820. Lastly, I want to follow up. I want to say that it was OC that had asked this wonderful question: what are the 3 top causes of fire for, we analyze it per annum, so we're looking at 2020, even though we're able to pick up on steady trends throughout the city as we go along. So this is for 2020, the first of which is incendiary, second, electrical, third, appliance. Those are the top 3 reasons. And for incendiary, even I had to get a little bit of clarification. Incendiary is more so of an open flame. So that covers a lot. That can be anywhere from cooking, because it's an open flame, a candle, also an open flame, and other issues that would other small pockets that would fall under actually having an open flame. And as I was talking, I saw someone a question. Barbecue pit. So a barbecue pit would also come under an open flame as well. So that is all for my report. As always, I am reachable at my email. That is sandra.sanchez@fdny.nyc.gov. And I will summarize everything that I've said to include in the chat if you've missed it. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate a good follow-up, and you did that because we posed that question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I believe, was it you, OC, who asked the question about the year-to-dates and the fires and that information as well? Was that you, OC?
I think so. I was really concerned about the percentage of the fire, of like the categories, like what type of fire and what percentage of them is like, electricity and other things. So I was kind of interested about that. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Yeah. And I also, while we're talking about good follow-ups, I want you to also publicly acknowledge that Deputy Inspector Bello has already sent over the flyer for the GLA information to be blasted. Chanel, I'm going to share that with you. Please send that out ASAP to the office listserv. I'm not sure how many people we have on there, but we'll share it there. And if you can post it on our community board Facebook page, that would be great as well. I think we need to publicize it as widely as possible. So I'll forward that along to you, Chanel, to share with the listserv. So thank you for those 2 quick follow-ups, all about action items and getting stuff done. All right, so we're gonna move on. I think that's it for our uniform services presenters. I did invite elected officials to join us. Oh, so I got an email from Jocelyn Minaya from the District Attorney's Office saying they were not able to attend because of a conflict, and so they were not able to attend today. Under the conversation of which we're going to go to now, discussion point about marijuana and what we can do next and what our action items are. I invited elected officials to also join us to speak and answer questions that we may have that law enforcement agencies may not know about the legislation because it's a policy issue. There is a vote apparently in Albany because the budget is voted on. They have some other corresponding bills I believe they are also tackling, so they were not able to join us. But we do have, I believe, someone from Senator Jackson's office, the policy director of policy, Matthew Levy. Are there any other elected officials or representatives on the call right now? All right, so cool. So I would love to, if Matthew, if you want to, give us an update on what's been happening with the budget. Are there any things that would impact public safety, funding for officers? Obviously, we know that's an issue that we should be tracking rather. And are there any updates on marijuana legalization? Particularly, I would love for us to talk about regulation and enforcement, because I think that's something that our committee is going to have to deal with, especially the how it's regulated. And I know there's going to be an agency that's not yet established. So I think if we can kind of learn more about what's out there, and we can determine what to do next to follow the issue as we move through the next few months of implementation. So Matthew Levy.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I am Senator Jackson's legislative director, and I just got back from Albany today. After we voted on the budget. The Assembly is still voting actually on it, but the Senate has completed it. So I'm delighted to be back here at CB12 as a former CB12 member myself. So let's just dive right into some of the issues. The MRTA, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, New York State has finally legalized adult use recreational cannabis in the state of New York, effective immediately. So it is legal to possess, it is legal to consume if you are an adult 21 years and older. The legislation, it's a little bit of a light read, it's about 127 pages. So if you find yourself some extra time, feel free to take a perusing of it. But because it's so new, the implementation and the sale and distribution for New York vendors will take some time. As Curtis alluded to earlier, we have now created what's something called the Cannabis Control Board and the Office of Cannabis Management, and they will be overseeing the implementation of and the execution of cannabis-related products in New York State. As a former regulator myself, I can tell you right now, when you're creating a brand new regulatory structure, it takes a lot of time before things can get implemented. In my personal opinion, this is by no way the actual timeline. It could take up to probably 18 months before we see anything actually starting to be sold in New York State by licensed vendors. And so let's just go into some parts of what's in the MRTA. So there are several types of licenses a person or entity can get. And even though it's called the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, the language of the bill is actually referring to cannabis. Marijuana is the particular strain, while cannabis is actually the plant itself. I see a question in the chat, why do they wait 18 months to legalize it? No, it's already legalized. It's already legalized. it's going to take some time for regulation to be created before we know what the structure is. So it's already legal to consume it. So there are several kinds of licenses. There is something called an adult use cultivator license, and this is only for farming of cannabis. There's an adult use processor license, which is converting the raw cannabis into various types of products, such as edibles and smokable products. This type of license is responsible for labeling products, including the amount of THC that is present in the product. There's adult use distributor licenses. These licenses are for those who would sell wholesale or distribute products between the processor and the retailer. And these types of licenses for the distributor are responsible for collecting and remitting the THC-based tax. The next type of license is the dispensary license for adult use, which is responsible for the direct sale of cannabis products to individuals for personal use. Again, these types of licensees are responsible for collecting and remitting retail taxes. And then finally, there are adult use consumption sites, which are retail locations that allow individuals to use cannabis products at that location. So again, this is all going to take time to work itself out before we see how it's really going to go in New York State. And the board right now, which will be actually made up by, excuse me, it's been a long day, so let me catch my breath for a second here. The board, which will be made up by appointees from various agencies, will be responsible for creating these regulations and implementing them as well. So the board will have staff. There will be 14 days to object to any decisions that they make. There will be a notice and comment period for regulations for people to comment on it. And the board will have, I believe it's about five, let me see here. The board will have 5 members. There will be a chairperson and 2 members appointed by the governor's office. The chair will require advice and consent of the Senate. The final 2 remaining members of the board will be appointed by the temporary president of the Senate, which is right now the majority leader, Andrew Stewart Cousins, and the Speaker of the Assembly, which is Carl Heastie. So when they try to pick these people, they are going to try and have it reflect the geographic and demographic diversity of the state. So there is proportional representation. A portion of the funds.
Is this happening to me only, or is Matthew frozen?
He is frozen. Matt, if you can hear us, can you say something in the chat?
Okay. So let's text him, let him know so he's not talking to the computer. Can someone?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I think I just dropped out. So I apologize for whatever that was. But so essentially there will be some kind of social equity aspect of the MRTA when it's being implemented. So before I shift to the budget, are there any other questions on the MRTA which I hopefully will be able to answer? Oh, just fire away.
You mentioned I think you cut out when you were, I guess, talking about the social equity piece, because and so my question was going to be about steps to make sure that costs aren't prohibitive for folks who might not be able to afford expensive licenses, and especially making sure that it's accessible to people who have been impacted, communities of color, one, and then those folks who have been impacted by incarceration related to this. So I know that there's been a lot of talk from different elected officials. So I guess thoughts on that?
Well, that's in the bill, right? That's part of the legislation.
Yeah, it's in the legislation. So I want to make sure I got your your questions correctly. So the concern about the cost structure of the licenses. Right. So I didn't see anything in the text of the bill itself just yet. It's possible that there could be a regulatory issue with how the board and the Office of Cannabis Management will set up the fees for licensing. So I might be able to circle back with you on that one, because it's literally being created from scratch. So I don't have any information as to what that cost structure is just yet.
Got it. Yeah, it would be great if you could circle back. And I guess if there is anything that your office can do to advocate, I'm speaking just for myself right now. I think it is important to make sure that costs are not prohibitive. That folks who have been impacted by incarceration related to this, and also, folks of color, communities of color.
Well, there seems to be a lot in the bill that the intention is to make it accessible with licensing and also the use of tax dollars to return to the communities in which have been impacted heavily because of the previous incarceration. Laws.
No, I didn't read through the whole thing, and that sounds great about tax dollars, but I think something really important is making sure that the cost of the license itself is not prohibitive, because I know that that's something that also with alcohol licenses that makes it tricky for different businesses, maybe bodegas, to get licenses, and also some businesses, even restaurants, opt to not get it because they can't afford it. So I just think that thinking about the cost and maybe like any sliding scale or something like that.
Well, the biggest issue that has always been the biggest issue for me with marijuana, and how other states have completely failed, right? Because they have not looked at, yes, you can make the cost prohibitive, but you have to have regulations in place to prevent licenses from people to being taken advantage of, right? You give someone a license, and then they sell the license to someone else, a wealthy billionaire, and they're now they're a minority stakeholder in their own business because they've sold their licenses. There's all these different ways that people can take advantage of people who are already being taken advantage of or underserved. So we have to be really careful with all those things, with the cost structure and with the ability for people to transfer their licenses and to be abused to the transfer of licenses, as we see happening with people transferring their taxi licenses and all other sorts of licenses. It is a huge, huge issue. And I think that we have to make sure that we look beyond, further than just the cost of the license, but look at the cost of put systems in place to prevent others from being taken advantage of by those who would buy the license from you or abuse their license and make sure they don't get any profit at all.
No, as we see, I guess I'm just thinking of like the small, people who are always brought up in during these meetings, the people who are selling, weed in our communities, like those sorts of people, like have the opportunity to get a license if they do decide to, to pursue that.
I also do want to mention something else that I didn't mention earlier. In the legislation, it allows for expungement of criminal convictions for marijuana-related arrests. That expungement process is not automatic. So it's going to take some time to figure out a way to make sure that people who are eligible for expungement to get that information out there so they can get their records expunged. And if they want to pursue a license, they are able to do that. I didn't mention that earlier, but that is particularly important that this board, my community board, be aware of that, because I know in communities of color, we have arrests for simple marijuana possession, and now they have the ability to have that record expunged.
The expunction will be for possession, not for dealing, right? Not for selling?
I will have to clarify that, but I know it's going to be for at a base minimum for possession.
Okay.
Has there been any studies? I'm sorry, Curtis, just a final question. I don't know if you could answer it, but has there been any studies conducted to ascertain what impact legalizing marijuana has had on like the local drug dealers?
There is some data out there. I've come across it. I've seen some research out there. Matthew, have you seen any?
I haven't, but Curtis, I'll circle back with you and discuss that with you.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
I know that's like a controversial thing somebody mentioned in the chat, but I do think that is what I was referring to. I do think it's important that those folks have the opportunity to have licenses if that is something that they choose to do it, since it will now be legal.
In some cities, it has not had an impact on the local illegal market at all. And so there's a lot out there to unpack. So I think we're leaning towards, I want to open it up for questions for if people have questions for Matthew, but I do feel like we as a committee should carry over this item to May and have it as an agenda item for May, and have perhaps others join Matthew and whoever else we can think of to join the conversation to talk about some of the things that you mentioned, Danielle, as well as to become more aware of what's happening with the Office of Cannabis Regulation. I think that's going to be really important for us to follow as a committee, as well as what the revenue, the tax structures, and what that's going to be. So I want to also just kind of get your committee, I guess, if you agree with this, but I did send over. Thank you, Deputy Inspector Bello sent me like a FAQ. I shared that with the committee, but I also shared that with the exec committee. And I shared with them a few suggestions, because this issue is big. It crosses over in the housing issue, because people are going to be complaining about, marijuana being grown in the building. And so people are going to have, and people can maybe get evicted if they're growing more than 6 ounces. You can grow, there's like 3 ounces for your two different stages of how you can grow, I believe, Matthew. But anyway, so over 6 ounces is illegal inside, and you can perhaps maybe in the future get evicted for growing 20 ounces. So I think it's a housing issue. It becomes, and then Mary Anderson reminded us that it's also an aging issue, because there's medicinal and all the other things going on as well. It's a license issue, because the licensing and who applies and how they get that structure is going to could possibly go to the licensing committee. So it's not necessarily our committee responsibility to talk about who gets a license and how that process works. It is a licensing committee issue. And then there's education committee, because there's youth involved. So I think that there are a lot of different committee that's going to be impacted by this overall legalization of marijuana. So Francisco suggested that we have a community board town hall and invite multiple players, invite all the committee chairs and whoever else is, and the community members to come and pose questions to the policy people like Matthew, as well as those who are involved with thinking through some of the regulatory issues and enforcement issues. So I agree with Francesco, but I can't represent the full committee. So I want to get your thoughts on us kind of pushing the idea of a community board or community-wide, perhaps public hearing, where we can hear concerns or we can hear people's comments about this issue.
You asking me?
I'm asking my committee members.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What if you have thoughts on having a more, community board wide public hearing on this issue, as we would do for other large issues?
I think it's a good idea. I think we have to be really careful about the framing of it, because it's all, like you've said several times this evening, it's already been passed. And so I think there's just a danger of going back to saying the cons of this. So I think the wording and the framing, I think, is going to be important, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I definitely we would not talk about cons at all. I would think we would stay away from that altogether. I think it would be more so information sharing. But it was suggested by Francesco, who was the business committee chairperson, not necessarily me. So I just want to get your assessment on whether or not you all will buy into that. Anyone else? Other thoughts?
Yeah, I just had a question. I don't know that Matt, I don't know if you can answer that, but I wonder what's the implication for those that sell without a license? Right now you go on different streets, they have a menu, they lean in against a street tree, and they have a little menu, and they sell weed or I don't know what else off their cars. So what's going to happen to them, to the people that continue to sell illegally? Technically, that's an illegal way to sell pot, right? And I'm not talking about other drugs, which other drugs are obviously still illegal. So we are leaving those off the discussion.
Right. So great question. And this is not the first time that issue, I'm sure, has been brought up. And OC, I'll be entirely honest with you, it makes me harken back to the days just thinking about the licensing process when you were on CBA 12 together. So here's the thing. All right, so it's legalized now. So by selling it without a license, it's very possible the person can get a civil fine. Again, this is all up to the Office of Cannabis Management that's responsible for the enforcement of this law. This office is brand new. It was just created. So I can't really speak as to what the penalties will be right now because there's no, from what I'm looking through and seeing, the penalties aren't really spelled out right now. Again, I will have to circle back and definitely give you more information on that. But from what I'm seeing right now is that we'll have to see just how it plays out.
Okay. All righty. So without further ado, I think we've come to the end of our end of the road here on this particular topic. We will. I don't think we need to take the lead as a committee to usher in a public hearing on this issue. If other committees want to do that and we join, we can do that. I think we just want to learn more about the process. It seems that's what our committee is suggesting. So I'm going to follow your lead. We'll invite Matthew back in the month of May. Maybe he'll know more about this new Office of Cannabis, whatever they're called now. And they can maybe have someone to join us from their agency or something of that nature. So are there any other questions? I see Lynn and Kelly. Are your hands up from earlier, or you have a question for our policy guy, Matthew? All right. So Lynn, you want to pose your question to Matthew Levy, followed by Kelly, and we'll close out tonight.
Right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Matthew, here's my question. What you talked about was the business aspect and the social aspect of the legislation. What's going to be the mechanism for those issues that we talked about at the beginning of the call? The enforcement, it seems like we're in this no man's land where the old laws don't apply anymore, but the new laws haven't really been created in terms of like how is policing going to be done? And it could be that it's just sort of, like you said, we'll see how it goes. But is this new office that you described going to be responsible for that? I think I'm not clear about that. And it could be the legislators aren't clear about that either. And they've just said, okay, new department, you're going to figure this out.
All right. So the Office of Cannabis Management is responsible for the enforcement of this law. But again, the Office of Cannabis Management, it doesn't appear that they have any, what I would say, the criminal authority whatsoever. This is just a civil authority. So on what we're looking on law enforcement is really, I can't really speak to that right now because of how new the legislation is here.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is we're sort of in this no man's land. It's very ambiguous, but just as a regular old citizen, I'm saying this is an area that needs a great deal of clarity soon.
Yes.
And other folks might be feeling that.
Yes, we agree. That's why I'm going to keep it on the agenda for the month of May, and we can hopefully know more information then and have Matthew join and others to join as well to be a part of that conversation. But I do think that it is concerning, especially hearing what we heard earlier at the beginning of the call. Like we don't know. There's no one knows how to enforce this. So I think we need to continue the conversation, Lynn.
Thank you.
All right. So Kelly, you're the last commenter, if you're still there. Going once, going twice. Kelly, are you with us? All righty, so I don't see or hear Kelly. So I think that concludes our meeting. So I think based on what we have one agenda item for May thus far, and that is to carry over the marijuana conversation And I do think that we should also perhaps have our council member join us next month to talk about some of the enforcement issues over the summer. And I'll make sure that happens as well. Are there any other comments, questions, or concerns before we have a motion to adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion
No?
to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so moved. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
Enjoy next week, Curtis.